Monroe, North Carolina is not one of the big cities of the South. But it likes to remember that one of the biggest stories of the South began here, the story of William Henry Belk. This church in Monroe is a part of the story, as are many other churches throughout the South. This is the Belk store in Monroe today. Monroe is where the Belk story began. The Belk story also tells how the entire South became loyal friends and customers of the merchant from Monroe. However, the prelude to the story is Mr. Belk's childhood. His first memory is of the Civil War and the day his father was compelled to leave him and his mother alone on their tiny Carolina farm. The family's lonesome vigil was to be short. The tragedy that was darkening the land did not spare young Henry Belk. The message said simply that Henry Belk's father had been overtaken by Sherman's troops and had been drowned. Years later, as a helper in a Monroe store, Belk's early farm life enabled him to recognize the hardship imposed on farmers who pledged tomorrow's crops against today's purchases. Though the practice had been traditional for generations, William Henry Belk was sure a change would benefit everyone. In 1888, at the age of 26, Mr. Belk decided it was time to try out his ideas. He risked his small savings, his credit, and his reputation to open a new store in Monroe under his own name. His competitors must have chuckled when they heard that Belk would sell on a cash basis only. All prices would be clearly marked and returns accepted cheerfully if the customer was dissatisfied for any reason. The more experienced merchants knew, of course, that any one of these policies was a sure road to failure. And to be sure, there was slight encouragement from Belk's early customers. In 1891, while the Monroe store was still seeking a foothold, Mr. Belk called on his brother John, who was then a young country doctor. He told Dr. John of the ideas he was trying out in Monroe. Mr. Belk must have been convincing. Dr. John agreed to give up his practice to become a partner. Thus, the store became known as Belk Brothers, and a unique team was formed. The two had great admiration for and confidence in each other. Together, they put into practice ideas that were to have a significance far beyond the limits of Monroe. Here, Mr. Belk and his early staff posed for their first picture together. The Monroe store and its staff today, 3 generations later, show how successful Mr. Belk was in winning the approval and support of his community. Farming was the big business of the South while Mr. Belk was getting started in Monroe. However, despite his own rural background, Mr. Belk knew the importance of industrialization, and he played a great part in promoting its growth. He sought and encouraged new industries for the area. This diversification meant employment without dependence on the success of crops. Mr. Belk invested in textiles to hasten the development of this industry. Tobacco products gave the economy a boost. With the rise of heavy industry, the rural South became the industrial South, and a new prosperity was arriving. These changes resulted in new employment, new population centers, new demands. developments William Henry Belk played a part in creating. As you will see, the Belk story is the story of the South itself. From the beginning, Mr. Belk made a point of offering to his customers the products of local industry. Thus, trucks arriving at Belk's unloaded in growing volume the output of southern mills and factories. These modern Belk stores show how Mr. Belk began to branch out at the turn of the century. Mr. Belk believed that intimate understanding of his customers and community accounted for his early success. He carefully chose each new manager, giving him complete authority to satisfy the needs of his customers. Thus, each new store, like the first store, was independent and dedicated to the needs of its community. In the 20s, the Belk store's expansion reached into other states. Thus, the great family of Belk stores rooted itself deeper and deeper. Mr. Belk's philosophy of independent thought and individual authority proved as successful as democracy itself. Uninterrupted expansion continued. When he started in Monroe, Mr. Belk never dreamed that his ideas would one day stretch from the Atlantic to Texas. Today, there are more than 330 Belk stores. Henry Belk remained active in the management of the stores until his death in 1952 at the age of 89. His memory is perpetuated today not only by the stores, but by churches which he endowed in communities large and small throughout the South. At all times, one of the greatest pleasures that Henry Belk derived from his success was in the opportunity it provided to express his sense of civic and religious duty to the community. Not only churches, but educational and medical institutions as well benefited from the Belk philanthropies. William Henry Belk's great pride was in seeing his children, Henry, Sarah, John, Irwin, Henderson, and Tom, follow him in assuming responsibilities within the Belk management, projecting into the next generation the basic philosophies on which the Belk organization had been established. They are all engaged in the modern methods of merchandising which their father pioneered. The appearance of the country store of Belk's youth has disappeared. It is replaced by the modern department store with a great variety of merchandise from all over the world. The one-price system and the policy of guaranteeing the customer complete satisfaction with every purchase have proven themselves beyond a doubt. And there has been no change in the treatment of customers. Courteous service and the best value at the lowest price are not only traditional, but are also the foundation for successful operations in today's competitive economy. In Charlotte, North Carolina, a staff of merchandise specialists is maintained to keep the Belk stores abreast of changing trends. Also in New York, at the crossroads of the fashion world, experts serve as the eyes and ears for every Belk store. The stores are advised of the latest advances in style and share the massive purchasing power of the hundreds of Belk stores to create values that otherwise would be impossible. what of the future? The blueprint for Belk's is that of the South itself. Today, the growth of the region is nourished by its people, by its energy, by its natural resources. As they grow in abundance, the wealth and prestige of the area continue to thrive. Research develops new products and new methods. Human resources, too, are developed. Educational and cultural centers are growing both in number and influence. In Charlotte, as in other communities throughout the South, Belk's investment in the future is symbolized in the form of modern new buildings, which in every way will serve the swelling numbers of Belk customers. Though tomorrow may have a new look in the Belk family of stores, yesterday is not forgotten. Our idea is to sell goods just as cheap as we can and at the same time make a small profit. When a fellow buys something, he knows he can bring the goods back if he finds out they aren't what he wanted and get his money back. That's our idea, and we found that it worked. William Henry Belk.